Sir Balin and the Hallows. There were strange and mysterious things in Britain in King Arthur's day. These things were called the Hallows. The chief of them was the cup out of which Jesus drank at the Last Supper with his disciples, and in which blood was caught from his wounds on the cross. The second was the lance with which his side was pierced. The cup was called the Holy Grail. People said it had been brought to Britain by Joseph of Arimathea after Jesus was crucified. Joseph had been to Britain before. It is said that he was the uncle of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and that he had made his living in the tin trade. The fame of these things spread over Europe, and people came from many countries to see the Holy Grail. But after Joseph's death, people tried to steal the cup because they thought they could make it work magic for them. And so true lovers of the Grail hid it and kept it a secret. Everyone knew of it, but no one was sure where it was. Sometimes it would appear on the altar during a service and then disappear. Sometimes it appeared in a castle hall after dinner, or to a good man while he prayed. Sometimes the lance was seen with it, its point always flaming. Sometimes angels were seen with the Hallows, among with many other wonders. During the years of war, before King Arthur won back Britain for Christianity, the Hallows were not often seen. But as the worship of Christ was restored, they began to appear again. The castle of Carbonek was their chief haunt, and its lord Pallas became known as the keeper of the Hallows. The nearness of these holy objects gave men unusual powers, but did not make all men good. Pallas was a good man, but he had a brother, Balin, who was a very wicked man. Balin was able to make himself invisible, and he used this power to win battles and kill men unfairly. He made himself the terror of the countryside around Carbonek, until one day a knight known as Sir Balin the Savage passed through. Sir Balin was bringing a knight under safe conduct to the king, and as they rode near the town of Carbonek, the knight reeled and fell from his horse. No arrow had flown, and Sir Balin had seen no enemy, but there was a sound of hoofs, and in the chest of the dying man was stuck a spear. Sir Balin pulled out the spear and swore to avenge the death of the knight under his protection. He met an old hermit along the road and told him what had happened. The hermit explained to the mysterious murderer must be Balin, who had the power of invisibility. Sir Balin swore to hunt him down and kill him. Balin soon arrived at the castle of Carbonek, famous for the Hallows, but his mind was not on the Hallows, but on killing Balin. Balin was well received and taken in to supper. He refused to part with his sword. As he sat eating, he searched the row of faces intently. "Is there a knight in this court whose name is Balin?" he asked his neighbor. "There he goes," was the answer, "him with the dark face." Balin drew a deep breath. "Ah," he said quietly, "is that he?" Balin saw that Balin was watching him and came over and struck Balin on the face with the back of his hand and said, "What are you staring at me for? Eat your food and mind your own business." "You speak good sense," said Balin. "I will mind my business that I came here for." And he rose up and split Balin's head down to the shoulders. And then he snatched the spear that had killed the knight and thrust it into Balin's body. At this killing of the lord of the castle's brother, the hall was in an uproar. Everyone set on Balin, whose huge figure towered over them all. Pallas thrust them all aside and said he would kill his brother's slayer himself. He seized a weapon and at the first blow knocked Balin's sword from his hands. But Balin broke away and ran in search of a new sword, racing from room to room and finding none. Pallas pursued him hotly. Up the winding stairs leaped Balin, and as he ran, the sounds from the hall died away and there was a deadly quiet with only the sound of Pallas' feet behind him. If only he had a sword in his hand, or even a spear. He flung open a door and stood amazed at what he saw. The room was hung with silks such as he had never seen. There was a bed covered with cloth of gold, and a figure stretched silently on it, and a table of pure gold standing on 4 legs of silver, and upon the table was a marvelous shining spear. Balin knew that he was in the presence of the Hallows, but the sight of the spear took all thought from him. He seized it and turned on Pallas and ran him through the thigh. There was a terrific thunderclap. Pallas fell to the ground. Crash followed crash, and the walls and the roof of the castle came toppling down. The ceiling of the room fell in and buried both Balin and Pallas in the ruins. After 3 days, Merlin came and rescued Balin from the ruins. Merlin told Balin that the wound he had given Pelles was a dolorous blow and that he had suffered for it. For the spear he had used was the spear with which Jesus had been pierced on the cross, and Balin had used a heavenly object for his own earthly needs. Merlin explained that it was Joseph of Arimathea who lay on the bed of gold. Pelles was of Joseph's family, and so he became the keeper of the Hallows. The presence of the holy object had preserved the body of Joseph all these years. Until now, the Hallows had kept themselves apart from the world, but Balin had involved the holy spear in an earthly quarrel. The first results had been the wounding of Pelles, the destruction of the castle, and the coming of sudden death and disaster over the entire countryside. Merlin told Balin to go away, for no one could heal Pelles' wound for the time being. He said that the Hallows would move among men for a time, and men would be tormented by the glimpse of these heavenly objects. But after years of trouble and sorrow, Prince Galahad would come. He would heal Pelles' wounds and then bring the history of the Grail to an end. But until then, there was nothing to be done for Pelles. Balin reclaimed his sword and went on his way, but he did not live long. That very night he arrived at a castle. He was told that he could ride no further unless he fought with a knight who lived on a nearby island and would let no one pass without a challenge. Balin was weary, but he agreed to meet the other knight. He did not know what final grief lay before him. "Sir," said a knight, "your shield is not good. I will lend you a bigger one. Please take it." Balin took the shield, which did not carry his own device, and went out. When he came to the island, he embarked his horse and himself on a boat and went over the water. Out of the castle came riding a knight, all in red, on a horse with red trappings. It was Balin's brother, Balin, who had been searching for his brother. He too had been tricked by the people of the castle and had been persuaded to carry a shield, not bearing his own device. He looked eagerly at the advancing knight, but when he saw the shield, he knew it was a stranger's. They charged upon each other, the two best fighters of the day. At the first shock, they unhorsed each other. Balin, weary with long riding, was badly bruised, and Balin was first on his feet. They drew swords and struck each other with the tremendous blows, trampling to and fro until the ground was all mud and blood. Each gave the other 7 great wounds, of which one would have killed an ordinary man. Neither of them had ever met such an enemy. At last, the 2 knights collapsed on the ground, mortally wounded. "What is your name?" Sir Balin asked hoarsely, "for until now I have never found any knight who matched me. My name is Balin, brother of Balin." The world went black before Balin's eyes. He cried out, "O Balin, my brother, you have slain me, and I you." The 2 brothers died side by side, Balin first and Balin later that night. The next morning Merlin came and took Balin's sword. He told the people of the castle that no one would be able to handle this sword but the best knight of the world, either Sir Lancelot or Sir Galahad, his son. Merlin left the scabbard on the island, and he made a bridge over to it. The bridge was only 6 inches wide, and no man could pass over it unless he was a knight without treachery. So the scabbard was left to await such a finder. Merlin put the sword in a red marble block and floated on water. Merlin then set the enchanted sword on its journey along the waters of Britain until the right man could handle it.